legends, I hope you're all fantastic. Welcome to another installment of 5-Minute Tones. On today's video, we're on the AM4, and I want to show you how I like to dial in the Boogie Mark series models. There's models of the legendary and highly sought after 2C+, the Mark IV, which is my personal favorite Boogie, and the Mark V. Now, all Mark series amplifiers have different features and specifications, but at their core, they have this shared DNA. They've got way more in common with one another than they do have any differences. Now, that's not to say that the differences don't matter. They're generally pretty subtle, but if you're a Mark series aficionado, you know what I mean, where these small differences can make a big change in the overall feel and texture of the amp. Now, if you're a new Fractal user and you've never played a real Mark series amp, I want you to pay close attention to these settings. They might seem strange at first, but if you're someone who's used a real Boogie or you've watched any of my other videos on the Fractal Boogie models in here, this is gonna seem very familiar. I just set them up the way I set up the real amps, and they respond and sound very, very close to their counterparts. So let's enter amp mode by pressing button 2 and 3 together. You can see I've got the USA Mark IV lead model dialed up. I've currently got it at the stock settings. I'm using my free cab IR in the cab block. There's a low cut at 80 Hertz and a high cut at 8 kilohertz. A point of difference between the AM4 model and the various models in the AXFX3, FM9 and FM3 is that you've got all of the Mark series amp switches integrated into a single model. So there's not separate models for USA Mark IV lead and mid gain. I find this very, very convenient. We'll leave all the switches off to start. I'm gonna leave gain, overdrive, master, and level where they are, and we're gonna hear it at the stock settings. Now, I don't think this sounds particularly even close to good on here. It's actually pretty disappointing if you've heard recordings of these amps and then you try the model at the stock settings. It's certainly not bringing the giant chungus or the liquid lead tone we would associate with a Mark series amp, and here's why. The tone stack in a Mark series amp is pre-gain, meaning the bass, middle, and treble are going to play an integral role in shaping the overall texture of the gain. So do this, turn the bass all the way down, turn the mids down, quite low, I like around 2 on there, and crank the treble up on there. We're gonna turn it all the way up over here. I'm also gonna turn the presence down just a little bit. And we'll have a listen to this. The gain structure is a little different now. It's got rid of the mud, but at the expense of low end. It's also quite mid-rangey and honky sounding. So what we're gonna do is we're now gonna sculpt that tone using the graphic EQ. If we page across, you can see we've got the iconic 5-band Boogie EQ in here. And let's do this. We're gonna crank up the 80 Hertz slider on here for our low end. I like to cut a little bit of 240 Hertz. You might like to boost that if you like more of that woody, percussive Mark series tone. The 750 slider, we're gonna scoop right out. I'm gonna go down to around -9 on here. I like to add just a little bit of this 2200 Hertz slider over here. And my IR is already quite bright, so I'm gonna leave the 6600 Hertz slider where it is. If you're using a dark IR, crank that one up. I remember seeing a video with John Petrucci where he refers to this slider on the amp as like the mastering EQ. Let's have a listen to this now. That's a little bit more like it. We've got this very articulate and chunky tone happening. What you can then do is play around with these switches on here, which are going to change both the gain structure and in some cases the voicing on there. The mid shift is going to switch between the harmonics and the mid gain mode of a Mark IV. The bright switch is going to bring the bright cap in. I normally like to leave that on. The fat switch is going to emulate the pull fat on there, great for lead tones. And then the presence shift is emulating the pull presence on there. So what I've done is I've set up a couple of channels in this amp block with my favorite settings dialed in on the amp and a couple of the different switches pulled on here. So you can see channel B has fat, mid shift, and bright on. The channel C has the presence shift on, but the fat switch off over there. I think of the presence shift as like the Metallica or Lamb of God control on there. It makes it way brighter and percussive, whereas the fat switch is like the Steve Lukather switch on there. It just makes everything really nice and gooey for playing leads. Let's hear these different voicings now. Totally see why people get frustrated and confused by these amps if you don't know these little tricks and you don't know what the voicing switches do on there. It can be hard to find those sweet spots, but for my personal taste, if I'm playing like big chunky hard rock riffs on there, I want the fat switch off, mid shift and bright engaged, and the presence shift off. I'll turn the fat on for a nice thick lead, and then if I was playing thrash, I'd probably have the fat off and the presence shift off. With that in mind, I'd love to hear how you are all dialing in your Mark Series amp models on here, and I'll play you out with a couple more examples with my favorite settings. I'll add some effects from the AM4 on there as well. This preset is available in my AM4 preset pack. You can also check out my AM4 blocks library as well as my Patreon and the music that I make with my band Ragdoll. Have a great day. Go and make some loud guitar noises, and I'll see you next time.